Whoa. As we heard earlier, let me make sure I'm in the right place. Yes, I am. Bob, over the last number of years, was involved in a music project, you might call it, called the Grand Partisans. It was a tremendously important part of his life, and he gave great energy and derived great joy from that work. The Grand Partisans are going to play for us tonight, and just before they get going, I want to let you know that they are Alan Zisman, Georgina Arnson, David Anderson, and Bill Hood. So I think it'll take them a second to get going, but Grand Partisans.
Thank you very much. We're going to sing you 3 songs tonight. The first song was written by Grand Partisans, and we of course got our name from him, but he was also a very important person to Bob, who admired his pioneering spirit, his ear for harmony, and his poetic turn of phrase. The song we're going to sing is called Hickory Wind. In South Carolina, there's many tall pines. I remember the old tree that we used to climb. But now when I'm lonesome, I always pretend I'm getting the feel of hickory wind. I started out younger at most everything. All the riches and pleasures, what else could life bring? But it makes me feel better each time it begins, calling me home, that hickory wind. It's a hard way to find out that trouble is real in a faraway city with a faraway feel. But it makes me feel better each time it begins. Hickory wind keeps calling me home, that hickory wind. by Bruce Springsteen, and it's called The Ghost of Tonko. Been walking down the railroad tracks, going someplace where you can't come back. Police chopper coming over the ridge, soup on a campfire under the bridge. Shelter line stretches round the corner. Welcome to the new world order. Families sleeping in their cars out west. No home, no job, no peace, no rest. Oh, the highway is alive tonight, but no one jokes about where it goes. Well, I'm sitting down here at the campfire light, searching for the ghost of Tonko. Pulls a prayer book out of his bag, and the preacher lights a bud and he takes a drag. Waiting for the last to be first and the first to be last. In a cardboard box beneath the underpass, I got a one-way ticket to the promised land, with a hole in your belly and a gun in your hand. Sleeping on a pillow of solid rock, bathing in the city aqueduct. Oh, the highway is alive tonight, but where it's headed everyone knows. I'm sitting down here at the campfire light, waiting on the ghost of Tonko. Tom said, Mom, where a cop is beating a guy, where a hungry newborn baby cries, where there's a fight against hatred in the air. Look for me, Mom, I'll be there.
Where somebody's fighting for a place to stand, or a decent job, or a helping hand. Where someone's struggling to be free. Look in your eyes, Mom, you'll see me.
Oh, the highway is alive tonight, but no one's scared about where it goes. Sitting down here at the campfire light, I am with the ghost of Tonko. I am with the ghost of Tonko. I am with the ghost of Tonko.
Simon Kendall back there. He just really, we loved working with him, and he was so great at working with us and just bringing out the best in everyone, and he had a great relationship with Bob. I know they would often get together and listen to the takes and so on, and it was just, thanks to Simon, that our CD sounds the way it does. So thank you so much, Simon. I know Bob will I know he's up there, he's with us on stage right now, for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So,
You would love this.
so we started playing other people's songs, of course, and then occasionally we would write a song. And the last song we're going to play for you is a song that Bob wrote, and it's called Home. And some of the lyrics are in your program tonight. And I know he was very proud of this song, and we're very proud to play it for you.
He would love it if you sang along too. We always encouraged everyone to sing on this one.
I didn't know when I left California, the golden north would make a place for me. I didn't know the good friends who were waiting to help me grow in the shadow of the sea. Home is where the heart is. The sun goes down, there's music in the air. Michael plays the djembe drum and dances down the stairs. Oh, it's where the heart is. Oh, doesn't take any time at all. Oh, when the rain falls on the mountain. Oh,
Not Stand Alone is available in the foyer. More details to follow. How are we all doing? The standers okay? Is this, yeah? Anybody, just let someone know if you need to switch. And someone can stand and someone can sit for a bit. Don't be shy. Imagine Bob standing for an hour, wanting a chair. Channel Bob and say, hey, come on. Okay, we're good. So next I'd like to introduce a longtime friend of Bob's, whose families celebrated together, played on the lake together, and someone who Bob was actively involved in BCTF politics with, the best chair of any meeting I've ever seen, our friend Jane Turner.
Hi, everybody. Here we are. You know, it's amazing when you come, third or fourth in the speaking list. A lot of your stories actually have been told, so you know that whatever I say, I'm not lying, because you've heard them before. And I'm just punctuating. A number of years ago, my really good friend, who you now know very well, Bill Hood, began speaking on a fairly similar occasion by saying the following: there are many things you'd happily do for your friend, but this isn't one of them. And I want to tell you, this isn't one of them. But it is what we do. We talk about the person we loved. We talk about the person who was our friend. Because we want to honor their memory. We want to talk about them to keep the life that they lived alive in our own memories. And sometimes I think we talk about them because we want to learn from the lessons they taught us. So in talking about Bob tonight, I want to do all three of those things. I want to honor his memory, I want to keep him alive in our memories, and I want to take the lessons that he taught us for myself. The outpouring of grief about Bob's passing and the praise for his warmth, his kindness, his commitment to social justice has been amazing. You gotta know that Bob would have loved it. But he also would have made some self-deprecating remark about how it wasn't really deserved. I gotta say, deserved or not, it's how people feel. You just look around you. This is a testament to how people felt about Bob. Bob was a truly warm human being. It was lovely to be greeted as if you were the only person in the room, to be embraced in a Bob hug or your hands grasped by his two big hands. Bob had a lot of ways of making an individual feel special. It may have been his greeting of, "We don't see you enough," or his pulling out one of those great bottles of wine that he bought from his cellar to share. Bob had a number of ways to show us each that we mattered to him. Bob also worked, surprise, surprise, to make this world a better place for the collective. Whether he was calling to borrow my house to host a fundraiser for the war resistors, or calling some of you to go down to the Occupy movement to lend our bodies and our voices and our support. You always knew that Bob was going to engage you in a great political discussion or encourage us to take an action that was aimed at making the world a better place. Bob spent his adult years working for equality and justice, for public education, for the Palestinians in the occupied territories in Gaza, and for workers in Vancouver and around the world. Bob did what he could to make things better. Years ago, in one of those quiet moments that you get with your friends, Bob told me that he was seeing a therapist about his life. And the therapist asked him, "Bob, what do you want your epitaph to be?" He said he thought for a minute, he looked at her and he said, "I want it to read, I fought for social justice." I don't think it's going to be hard to keep Bob alive in our memories. Bob was larger than life and he's going to remain here forever. Every time we have a great meal, a fabulous glass of wine, and claim it to be the best ever, we'll smile and we'll remember how Bob always claimed that status for anything that he had done. Fortunately, we also can listen to his wonderful voice. Thank goodness the CD got done. And I know that all of us, it's going to be bittersweet to hear Bob sing, but it is a voice that will carry on. Over the years, Bob and Eva spent a lot of time up at our place on Saginaw Lake. And as you know, when you live with people, you get to know them in a fairly intimate way, sometimes more than you wanted. I found out, like David Chudnovsky, that Bob used to have great animated discussions with himself. We were quietly reading on the dock one day, and all of a sudden I hear Bob talking, and I'm looking, and Eva says, he does that a lot. Just ignore him. So we did, and we kept on reading, and Bob finished his great debate and was very satisfied because I think that's when he has the best conversations. Bob actually was a master at seizing opportunities to engage in political dialogue. And not just with all of us who like to talk about politics. Bob could get anyone to engage. He even got my kids to talk politics. And at breakfast. I have this great memory of setting the table for our breakfast on the deck at Saginaw. And the kids are there, their friends are there, and Bob sits down, and he turns to them and he asks a question. You know, Bob's a teacher. He asks a question. He said, what does it mean to you to be progressive? And from there it went. And went, and went. Bob was also capable of great acts of kindness. When David, my husband, was ill, dying of cancer, Bob would visit, spending time with him or driving him to his favorite bookstore. This wasn't an easy thing, as David didn't go gently into that good night, but Bob showed up. And for that, I will be forever grateful. I know that there are so many things which we'll each remember Bob about. He will really never get lost in our memories. So that brings me to the third thing, which is the lessons he taught us. Over the years, we talked a lot, Bob and Eva and David and I and Bill and Terry, about the importance of family. When David and I were trying to decide whether to have kids or not, it was Bob who said that having children makes you more fully human. How right he was. Bob was never more human, more open to his flaws and his frailties than when he was talking about his family. Whether it was his small nuclear family of Eva and Michael, or his extended family of Janine and Andrew and Brianna, Stanley, Popo, Daniel, I knew he loved his family. Bob wasn't shy about saying so. He may not have always showed it in the ways that they wanted or needed him to, but when he talked to me about his family in those quiet moments at Saginaw Lake, I knew how proud he was and how much he loved them all. Finally, Bob helped me remember to be brave and to stand up for what I believed. He said, the state might get you, but it'll never get what you stand for. He showed by example that it really didn't matter if you were ridiculed by your peers, dismissed, or have friendships dissolve. When it was over, a matter of principle, it didn't matter. True friends may not agree with you all the time, but they respect you for your integrity and for living your truth. He taught me that was really what was most important in life. As I was sitting down to write this memorial for Bob, I started browsing through poetry and came across a poem that said to me, more than anything, this is Bob. It's a poem that's written by Maya Angelou. She wrote it about her life, so we might want to change the gender and the cultural and racial references, but I hope that you too will see Bob in this poem as much as I did. It's called Still I Rise. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room? Just like moon and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I rise. Do you want to see me broken, bowed head and coward eyes? Shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard? 'Cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I am a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, and I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. And so, my dear friend Bob, I think you got your wish. As hard as it is to be in a place where I'm talking about epitaphs, when I see you so clearly in Maya Angelou's poem, your epitaph will forever be, he fought for social justice.
And now I'd like to introduce Bob's son, Michael Rosen.
So thank you all. Thank you all for coming. My mom and I have felt really supported and loved in this difficult time. And as you can tell by our choice of a venue, I've continuously been surprised by the overwhelming impact my dad has had on a lot of people and the support that he had in his life. You know, I wasn't going to talk about this, but I've been learning a lot about my dad in the last 3 months. And one of the things I learned from Stanley, his brother, was that he always wanted to be a rock star, and from a very young age. And when, you know, to be a rock star, you couldn't just have like a normal Jewish name like Rosen. You had to come up with a name right for yourself. So his name was Bobby Raz, R-I-Z. And my stories are not going to cross over with a lot of people's. My experience is quite unique, I suppose, of my dad, and that's what I want to share with you. So, as many of you have probably experienced, he had a huge heart, and he was a really open and loving man in a world where men are taught to be stoic and hard, and where we're taught to cut off a lot of our humanity. And I feel really privileged to have had a father that willingly showed emotions, affection, and vulnerability. And these qualities that I valued in him are also attributes that thankfully he passed down to me, so be patient with me in this speech. My dad was incredibly supportive in everything that I did as a child, and from as soon as I could walk, I loved playing sports. He took a lot of pride in my athletic achievements, as I'm sure many of you know all too well. My cousin Ben remembers going to see one of my basketball games with my dad, and he says that as I was playing, my dad would like move with me in the seat. At Van Tech, he and my mom were often the only parents that came out to see our basketball games, which meant that they would play a role of parents to other players as well. And one of my teammates who's here tonight still remembers my dad yelling at him from the bleachers. While my dad was very present in my childhood, there were also challenges in our relationship, I guess as with every father-son relationship, that created some distance between us. And for all his warmth and affection, we've heard a lot about his booming voice, but he didn't hesitate to use that voice with my mom and with I, and he had a bit of a short fuse. He also went through a severe depression. And at 10, this was pretty hard for me to understand. What I saw was my dad watching TV or sitting on the computer all day while my mom did everything, worked and cooked and cleaned. Depression is hard for anybody who's outside of that person's head to understand, and it was hard for me to see that my dad was also doing courageous work at the time with counselors. Sorry, I can't read my speech because I'm crying. And taking small steps to make himself better. And when he retired, he was eventually able to come off antidepressants completely, and he achieved another mental health goal, which I find even more impressive. He was able to smoke pot without getting paranoid. Which is still something that I aspire to. As a teenager, I grew somewhat emotionally distant from my parents, and particularly my dad, but our house became the central hub of our friends' social lives. There was a running joke after school when we were trying to decide where we would go or what we would do. Somebody would say, "Whose house?" "White's house!" That was the response. After all, our house was appealing. It was well stocked with cookies and chocolate syrup for making chocolate milk, and it wasn't meticulously clean. But most importantly, people knew they'd be welcome there. Our house was a safe place to do the stupid things we would have done anyways as teenagers. And so my parents were a little bit ahead of their time, effectively applying harm reduction long before the city of Vancouver. My dad really did love my friends. And one of the things that he did that annoyed me the most was actually interrogate me about the people in my life. Even as an adult, if I told him I went to a party, he'd ask, "Was there anyone there that I know?" And if yes, start to either question me about people, or worse, throw some theory about how they were doing and why. "Don't you think Steve seems a little down these days? Are he and his girlfriend doing okay?" At the time, I saw this behavior as nosy and gossipy, and I told him as much. So I was shocked after he passed to hear my friends, one after another, say they were so impacted by him because he took so much interest in their lives, took the time to listen to them, and remember their names and their stories. For one of my friends who had quite a challenging home life, to be able to come to our house and be nourished and listened to and cared for by my parents, I think was a pivotal experience. And it also helped me realize how lucky I was to have parents that were so capable and so caring. In later years, my dad insisted that my roommates, Melanie and Wagner, be invited to family dinners. They didn't have a lot of family in Vancouver. And the respect and love between them was palpable, and his passing is a real loss to Melanie's soon-to-be-born child. As for Tracy, my amazing partner, he admired how compassionate, loving, and intelligent, and politically radical she is, and cared for her deeply. However, what he loved most about her was that, in his words, her decadent streak. Her love for the good things in life, which is obviously something that he shared with her. My dad was also an incredible pseudo-grandfather to Brianna. He was always willing to hear her out no matter how much she talked about herself. And would give her advice, often over some kind of dessert. He was also her protector. One day she came home to our house after a teacher had harassed her in the hallway about wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt. And the next day she went back to the teacher and told him that her grandpa, Bob Rosen, wanted to speak with him. The teacher apologized immediately. True story. 6 years ago, when I came home to settle in Vancouver, our relationship was okay, but I still felt quite emotionally distant from my dad, and he had come to largely accept our relationship as it was. But I wanted a deeper connection, and my dad was not one to keep his opinions to himself. And so one of our struggles was around the major choices in my life, particularly my work. And I had been doing the awkward dance of trying to carve out my own path, while still trying to earn his approval. And what I came to realize recently was that he longed for mine as much as I wanted his. And that though he worried about me, I didn't have to earn his approval. I already had it. In the last 3 years, we did some really powerful work to try to bridge the gap between us. He was incredibly courageous and more than willing to have hard conversations. He was accountable and honest and wanted more than anything to make things right, where he had wronged. Though the process was more challenging and slower than I wanted it to be, I was beginning to cultivate a new openness and love towards him. I wish we had more time to bridge that gap between us, and at the same time, I'm incredibly grateful that we got the chance to do the work that we did. If there's one thing that I've learned from my dad's passing, and that I guess I want to share with you, is to have those hard conversations with the people that we care about, because the earlier that we start, the more time we have with that person to develop a deeper and more authentic and hopefully more loving relationship. My dad was an incredibly open man, full of love and life, introspective, articulate, and passionate. I've learned from his struggles as much as from his strengths, and I'm truly grateful to have such a loving and dedicated father. If any of you still have any glasses of alcohol in them, I'd like you to raise them. Or no alcohol. In a toast to my dad, Bob Rosen.
Bravo.